Let's talk about transportation. We have a lot of problems facing us in transportation in the state of Missouri. The Federal Highway Trust Fund is going bankrupt. The state funding is not keeping up with our transportation needs. What will you do in Congress to bring more transportation dollars to this region? I believe, Mrs. Baker, this is your turn.
It is incredibly important to attract jobs to our state, to have good roads and good infrastructure. And when we talk about infrastructure, we are talking roads and bridges and other forms of transportation, hopefully some more mass transit for a growing population. But in addition, I think we're talking about infrastructure as things like higher education and schools and our healthcare system and so on. Bill Gates, I had the opportunity to listen to him one time, and he said, he was asked the question, what attracts jobs to states? And he says, well, you know, the myth is that it's, you know, some kind of tax incentives and so on, which Missouri is really good at already. But he said, but if you look at the states that actually do attract jobs and have booming economies, it's the ones who have incredibly robust infrastructures, good roads, good transportation, good healthcare system, good education system, chance to go to higher education. So I think it's incredibly important that we focus on our infrastructure. And I would propose, you know, if we can borrow $700 billion or to bail out billionaires on Wall Street, surely we can find the money to start a program where we actually put people to work. The most important thing, as I said earlier in our talk, the most important thing is that we have people who are given the dignity of work. And we can have works projects that build roads, bridges, and most importantly, and I think that this is the vision for the future, and when we talk about this new energy economy, we're going to have a modernized electrical grid. You know, we need a superhighway for energy. We have windmills up in upstate New York that can't get the energy down to New York City where the energy is needed because of our outdated and antiquated electrical grid. Part of new vision for infrastructure for us is going to be a new electrical grid that is our new superhighway for energy. These are the important things that we're going to have to do to make sure that the proposals we plan are going to be able to be implemented.
Mr. Luetkemeyer.
Thank you, Bob. I think that transportation encompasses a number of things, not just roads. It also includes ports, it includes airports. Those are key things that are, and in fact, there are a lot of them in our district. I mean, we have the Mississippi River along one side of the district, you have the Missouri River that goes through it. Ports are extremely important, especially to the agricultural community and the industrial community, to be able to get goods and basic raw materials up and down those rivers and to their plants or their produce away from their fields. So I think that there's a lot of things that are encompassed when you start talking about transportation. Right now, Missouri is a donor state when it comes to federal tax dollars. In other words, for all the tax dollars that are taken from us, we don't get 100% of them back. So one of the things that I think we don't need to do is probably raise the federal tax right now from the standpoint that why do we want to continue to send money out of state to other states whenever we can't get it all back? I think if you want to try and develop some sort of tax plan for improving roads, I think you have to go back to the states and say, hey, you guys, if you want to keep all your dollars in your state, you've got to start looking to try and find ways to finance your own things, and we'll help you with what dollars we have. I think you go back and you prioritize how you want to spend on certain projects. I think at the state level, something that we were working on when I was in the House is some public-private partnerships on things to be able to stretch those dollars both for the state and the federal government with needs that are met by the local communities or industries as they come in. I think, you know, we as a state have got an opportunity to do a lot of great things, but it takes, when it comes to economic development, things like workers' comp reform, tort reform, those are things that I worked on when I was in the House, and it's turned our state around economically. These are things my opponent did not vote for when she was in the House. And I think those are two big differences right there. So when you start talking about economic development, transportation is a key to economic development, but things like tort reform, workers' comp reform that can also be taken to the national level will be another way we can improve our economic development in our state and our country. Thank you.
Each year, the St. Charles community hosts a robotics fair to highlight technological innovation. What are your strategies to spur innovation and technology-based economic development nationally to create the jobs of tomorrow? And Mr. Luetkemeyer, you get the first response.
Okay, would you repeat that question one more time? I'll
sure.
Just make sure
basically, what are your strategies, what would be your strategies in Congress as a congressman or congresswoman to spur innovation and technology-based economic development to create the jobs of tomorrow?
Well, I think you have to continue to incent those people, and you do it either through finding ways to reward their efforts with whatever means you want to, or you do it through tax relief. I think, again, you spur economic development, you spur innovation by not disincenting it, by taxing somebody every time they come up with an idea or they try and put a new company together. That's why it's difficult for the people here in our country to get any kind of new corporation off and going, and that's why so many jobs are leaving our country. When it comes to corporate environment, we have a terrible corporate environment. But I think if you look at the state of Missouri, the last 3 or 4 years, until this economic downturn here the last several months, we were somebody that you could look to as a model. Prior to 2004, we were losing jobs at a record rate, the highest in the country. And yet when in 2004, we started doing something different. And what was it? We started incenting businesses with tax credits, job credits, and mainly that's the way to go is if you want to really incent and get your economy going, is through job credits, helping to incent businesses to hire people. They also passed workers' comp reform, as I stated earlier, and they've passed tort reform, medical liability reform, which is a huge thing. We had doctors leaving the state, medical profession drying up, literally. OBGYNs were leaving the state in droves, and now suddenly those people are coming back. Medical malpractice insurance rates are down. Our economy is going. In fact, it was growing gangbusters until just recently. So, again, I think that we have an opportunity to do a lot of great things. I think what you do, you incent people for ideas that they have by keeping the tax burden off their back. Don't put more regulations on those folks than necessary. We can do things in an environmentally friendly way, but let's look at the cost benefit of putting regulations on people versus saving the environment. Many times we've reached the point where it's no longer cost benefit anymore. We're hurting ourselves rather than helping ourselves. There's a lot of things we can look at, and I think in those areas, and we'll stop right there. I see I'm out of time.
Mr. Baker, I want to apologize. I did not let you have your 1-minute rebuttal on the last question. So if you would like to go back to transportation for 60 seconds before we come back to the technology question, you're welcome to do that.
Well, actually, lucky for you, we actually, I think, kind of agree mostly on that topic.
Well, we'll go straight to your 2-minute.
We can agree with our opponents
we'll go
on many
straight
things.
To our 2-minute
it's where we disagree that gives
question.
you your choice.
Okay.
So I didn't chime up because
okay.
I think basically we know that we need to build infrastructure in Missouri, and that has been something that we have been lax on.
Okay. Now you have 2 minutes on the technology question.
Thank you. And let me address tort reform and workers' compensation and my record on that, because my opponent only sometimes gives half the facts. On the tort reform question, which I'm sure a lot of you are not real familiar with, but I withheld my vote on tort reform until we could get insurance company reform as well. And it is only after we got, and we had to wait 1 more year, but my side of the aisle pushed really hard to make sure that when an insurance company was making good profits, that they actually passed that on to their beneficiaries. So it was until I was holding out to make sure that we did the insurance reform that we needed to do to make tort reform effective. Now, on technology-based, this is incredibly important because this is the vision, this is your future. Many of you, I'm sure, are hoping to go into a high-tech field and get a high-paying job. And I hope for each one of you that you're able to do that if you want to. While my opponent is somewhat general on this topic, I've actually laid out specifics. Just last week, like I said, I was in Centralia, and part of the package of jobs creation that I proposed was actually reforming the research and development tax credits that we currently offer to promote high-tech companies. And what I proposed was that instead of having red tape every year and not knowing whether your R&D tax credit was going to continue, that they would be automatically renewable every year. So once you get a research and development tax credit, you didn't have to go back every year to the government and ask for it, and go through the red tape of asking for it and not knowing whether the program you had put in place was indeed going to survive into the next year. So that actually would bring a lot of relief to companies that need research and development tax credits to develop technology-based products. The other thing I would say is that, like I said earlier, healthcare is incredibly important to small businesses to make sure that, if a person wants to leave their business and start a small business that's high-tech or has an idea, they should be able to have health care that moves with them from job to job and have that opportunity.
Thank you. Mr. Luetkemeyer?
Thank you, Bob. One of the things that I supported when I was in the House was business innovation centers. It's something that's been very successful here in Missouri. I think it's a model we could take to the national level as well. We continue to work there to try and enhance people and incent people to try and do something new and different and help the small businesses get off the ground. Business investment is best spurred by different tax vehicles that allow people to continue to keep their own money. I keep going back to that, but again, that is the crux of spurring our economy on. It's the crux of businesses being able to survive. And at the end of the day, if you incent people by whether it's tax credits or letting them keep more of their own money, or whether you help them develop new markets overseas, finding ways to deregulate some of their situations so you don't just encumber them with more and more regulation, I think you can find a way to help those people get in business and get off the ground and get going.